Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavors of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your technical questions answered, and contribute to the community forum. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our construction tech or weekly global Passive House showcase webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Well, welcome back to the Passive House podcast for 2022. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh coming to you from a beautiful sunny Auckland in New Zealand.
And I'm Zack Semke coming to you from a dreary and depressing rainy Seattle in January.
Oh, it sounds terrible. I'm not saying that just to rub it in how nice it is here. I would actually appreciate some rain at the moment. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a long, hot, dry summer, but you know, I guess it depends on how you look at it. It's a stunning day where I am.
It's the weather has been stunning here in a different way.
Yeah, snow can be stunning.
Yeah, lots of snow, lots of rain. For the first time, I think, since the passes were built, all 4 mountain passes in Washington State are closed right now because there's been so much snow and there's flooding hazards and avalanche hazards. It's nutty, but our snowpack is going to be great, which will be good for the salmon and for the skiing and for the farming and all sorts of stuff. So that's good news. Yeah.
Awesome.
Looking on the bright side.
Well, that's right. It's all a matter of perspective. And yeah, we're looking forward to a good 2022. It's good to be back. We've had a couple of episodes that we pre-recorded over the break. Yeah. So great to be back chatting again on a regular-ish schedule, and we've got some other interviews already recorded and some other great ones coming up. So yeah, looking forward to a good year. And I know that there's lots of events which we'll get to later on, including some that were rescheduled from last year. So I think it's going to be a pretty busy year.
I think so too. I'm really looking forward to the year in Passive House in 2022 for sure.
Yeah, lots going on. All right, well, let's get into it. We've got a good interview this week, but before we do that, we've got some great supporters to thank for everything that happens at Passive House Accelerator.
Indeed, and I think you'll notice a couple of new names here. So all of our work at the Accelerator comes thanks to support from our sponsors. So our founding sponsors are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingui Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minutair All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification Units, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Our champion sponsors are Icon Windows and Doors, Proseco, and SIGA, and our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. So a big thank you to our sponsors.
Yeah, and cool to see a couple of new names in there.
Yeah, it's great to have new support.
Awesome. All right, let's get into this week's episode. A bit of a familiar voice this time round.
Indeed. So Kevin Brennan is co-host of Construction Tech. He also is co-creator of the Construction Tech show with Passive House Accelerator. He is a long time and frequent collaborator with Michael Ingui of Baxt Ingui Architects, and also Michael founded Passive House Accelerator. He is based in New York, has trained many tradespeople in New York. He was a trainer with the Association for Energy Affordability, as well as the Passive House Academy with Tomás O'Leary. He is a firefighter with the Fire Department of New York. And he is co-owner of Brennan Brennan Insulation and Airtightness. He's a tremendous resource of passive house knowledge and practice, and also a passionate advocate for the trades and for high performance practice in the trades, and just a really, I think, inspiring figure. So it was really fun to get a chance to sit down with him and do this interview. All right, Kevin Brennan, welcome to the Passive House podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
it's an honor to be on.
Well, many of the listeners know you well, probably from your role, many roles, one of them being the co-host of Construction Tech at Passive House Accelerator. You're also one of the leading instructors of Passive House tradespeople in the US. You're one of the most sought after Passive House tradespeople yourself in New York City. On top of this, you're a New York City fireman. So how did this come about? Share your story, please. This is really interesting.
My story is I was in college at the College of Staten Island. I did a study abroad program and went to Australia for 6 months. And I had a great time, saw the world, and really appreciated the culture that I observed there. The Australian culture really values the trades. It's like guys on the street and people, and you talk to people in towns, and they would be like, "Oh, that guy's got a great job. He works as a mason or a carpenter." Mm-hmm. But the culture I observed in New York City growing up was like, "Oh, the white collar jobs are better than the blue collar jobs for the because you can't get them by going to college." So when I came back from my study abroad program, I had a different perspective on the trades. So my plans of completing my degree kind of went to the side, and I found myself working for a weatherization company. So the weatherization company was based in Staten Island, a community-based organization called Northfield LDC, and they served low-income elderly people and people that fit underneath the income guidelines of the Weatherization Assistance Program, which is a wonderful program. For people that don't know it, it's a federally funded energy efficiency program that is it works really well, and it helps those in need to rather than just throwing money at the problem, weatherization solves the problems of the homes of the people who live in there. So they solve those problems by doing insulation and air sealing and other weatherization measures. So I cut my teeth there at Northfield, and crawling around attics and insulating, doing cellulose insulation blow-in, sidewall blow-in. And at that time in 2001, the Building Performance Institute just started ramping up training. And the BPI training, they had the building analyst, the shell specialist, and the heating specialist. That was training that was available. And weatherization allowed us to take those trainings. So it was great to be, one of the early adopters of that training that taught me as a young, 20-year-old kid how to use a blow-a-door and the reasons why we were crawling around those attics and insulating and air sealing and the effects they could have on the building, and also showing you the tools to evaluate and to prove that the work that you were doing is having an impact. So,
and the BPI training, about when was that? What
I would say 2002, 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
Just in those areas. So as a weatherization employee, there's a training and technical assistance funds that allows us to get training every year. So for a nonprofit organization, if you're a typical nonprofit that isn't funded by a federal program, training is hard to come by. But it was great to have that opportunity to participate in those trainings and to be brought up in like a culture that training was important. And it's a little ironic that I took most of that training in the Bronx at the Association for Energy Affordability. Where I was living in Staten Island, the distance between the Bronx and Staten Island was very far, and it wasn't easy to get to. But they had a great facility, great instructors, and ironically, many years later, I wound up working for that organization.
Right, you did a bunch of teaching there, right? Yeah. So 2000, early 2000s BPI training, weatherization. What next?
So. Prior to that, I took the New York City Fire Department test. My brother was a New York City fireman. All my coaches growing up were New York City firemen. They were great guys with great passion, and they really they really enjoyed what they were doing, helping the community and everyone out there. So all of my coaches growing up, my friends, parents, fathers, just a deep connection of people who seem to be very happy and positive members of the community. We're all New York City firemen. They always were, telling us, hey, this is a great job, take this. My dad was a New York City corrections officer, and a tough job and not an easy time in the late 70s, early 80s, and instructed me, take the New York City Fire Department test. It's a great job. And luckily in 2006, I got called for the New York City Fire Department. So I joined Proby School. I ended my position at Northfield. I took the job over in the fire department, and ironically, I got assigned to my first firehouse that was about 3 blocks away from Northfield's office. So, ironically, in the same neighborhood in Port Richmond, I was working in the same area. So that was pretty cool.
What's Proby School?
Probationary firefighter school. Yeah. So all the evolutions, the drills, some climbing ladders, using the hose, all the basic skills that you would need to be to have the knowledge, skills, and ability of a fireman.
Right. So you're a budding fireman then, and then also involved in weatherization. When did you start Brennan Brennan installation and airtightness and start doing your own practice?
I didn't start my own business until I want to say 2015, I think. Mm-hmm. I first was trying to find my way in the world of energy efficiency, working for a few different organizations doing energy audits and quality control inspections. My old job at Northfield I was an insulation installer, and then I became the quality control inspector, where I would check the work, or the post inspector. So I did the work, then we went around and checked the work, and we checked the work by doing blow-a-door tests and just inspecting that everything was done right, checking boilers and heating systems to make sure there was no negative impact on the building. And then a few years later, I became the energy auditor that was writing the scopes of work, doing the initial blow-a-door tests, kind of like solving the building science problems, hopefully, and then communicating with the crew chief what needed to be done on the projects to get a complete scope of work within the budget that we were allowed under the weatherization program.
Right.
So it was a great upbringing. It was all based in building science. Mm-hmm. The technical testing was phenomenal. The tools that we had between the blow-a-door tests, the combustion safety tests. We had a thermal imaging camera that was like a VHS recorder with a nozzle that nobody trusted us to use because it was too expensive. But so, I wouldn't give a 20-year-old kid a $30,000 tool either.
Right. Got it. So I was first introduced to BPI during the whole home performance kind of boom that happened after the Great Recession, because there was all the Recovery Act money that was going into funding home energy improvements and things, which was an exciting time. So I imagine that you were partly at some point. I mean, you got involved well before that, but did you start kind of riding that wave as well in New York City? Was that a big influencer, or?
So it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to find gainful employment in energy efficiency and also navigate the New York City Fire Department as a young, the young guy in the totem pole.
Totally.
Yeah. So my earlier roles were scheduling. It was based on like doing energy audits and quality control inspections, things that I can schedule around my fire department schedule.
Sure.
And then, just doing energy audits, I felt like I was still having an impact using my building science knowledge. All my building knowledge I'm getting from the fire department, they're going hand in hand. But I was very lucky in 2008 or 2009 to start working at the Association for Energy Affordability. Mm-hmm. So there, I through connections that I made, I was able to get a job being what was up and coming as the new training under ARA was the whole house air leakage control installer training, where it was teaching people how to do air sealing and insulation, as well as dense packed cellulose. So that that under ARA, they created these great standard work specifications, these job task analysis, and they created this entire training framework that was going to give us the ability to train the future of how to be installers, crew leaders. So it really standardized the training process. It was great to be involved early on. Like the first conference I went to with the SWS and the upcoming of the ARA money was so fueled with people with passion, creating training that was, could go from California to New York and without any seams going through it. And the standard, the props, the hands-on training was phenomenal. Those guys did a great work, and it's still active today. The SWSs are still out there, the standard work specifications. And it was great to be a part of that because there was reasons why they were doing it. They were doing it based on the knowledge that they learned in World War II when they tried to ramp up industry to keep up with the war. And it was standardize the work, qualify the workforce, and then actually do inspections and upgrades as you go along.
That's super interesting. I mean, you hear all the time now the analogy when we're dealing with climate change and climate action. You hear that kind of like we need a wartime footing. Those sorts of associations. So it's interesting that that home performance kind of boom that was happening was borrowing from the kind of the structure of that, the way that was rolled out was borrowing from our response in World War II. I want to spend just a moment to say that ARA refers to ARA, the American Recovery Act, which was this big bill and a bunch of federal dollars that went to a number of things, including home improvement, home energy audits, and why am I forgetting the home energy improvements? Was that the term? There's a term that was used a lot for that kind of energy upgrades, and then
home energy upgrades maybe
maybe so,
or energy efficiency, home performance, weatherization it's also a part of that because every county in the country has a weatherization agency, and then they have the skills and the ability, and the dream was to take the federal programs and just add another arm to them and take the lessons that we learned in those people that were working within those areas, and then make them crew leaders on home performance projects as well.
Right.
Right. So then you have a half-life. So then that crew then trains another crew, and then another crew trains another crew. And then the great work they did under standardizing the work and creating ways to like qualify the workforce was great. And it happened at the energy auditor level first, and then the quality control, but it never really like found roots in the for the crew leader or the installer. I guess taking that much time off and trying to make sure that they got trained and could pass the exam wasn't as applicable in the field for those workers, I guess, and those programs too, because those programs had to keep ramping up, and they didn't have the same funding that they thought they would have. After 2008, tailed off. Weatherization budgets and other things kind of didn't follow. So, but we at AEA, we created a great training program. We had a facility. We were ready to go. I was the main trainer. I was going to train the crew leader and the crew chief. And, I was 3 days a week when I was off the firehouse, we'd have training scheduled, and we scheduled the trainings, and it just the classes just didn't fill up as much as we thought. The trainings weren't mandated by the state. The home performance industry was busy out doing work. They couldn't take time off to do the training. So it was a little bit of a cart before the horse instance.
Yeah. So in the Pacific Northwest, we saw this kind of blooming of this home performance industry. And then when the federal dollars dried up, it kind of retracted, unfortunately. So I think that there are probably some lessons to take from that in terms of thinking forward about the kinds of actions we need to take in buildings, for climate action.
One of the things that I noticed was the market's really smart, they know what things should cost and how much they should go. So whenever they receive an incentive, that's to bring the first cost down to get the early adopters off the ground. But then when that becomes full price, the market doesn't really want to pay the price that it really costs to do. So now it's not subsidized. We saw that in training. When the training was subsidized, we had lines out the door. And then once the subsidized training ended, the training cost, with what was the fair price for it. And it wasn't the same. And people would always be kind of like, oh, we want that discount again. And it was like, that discount was for a short amount of time. Yeah. So one of the things I like about Passive House, kind of like bringing it almost full circle, was we had a training center that was gigantic in the Bronx, and it really wasn't being filled every day. And then at one of the Affordable Comfort conferences, I saw David White, who's a New York City practitioner, talking about Passive House. And like working in weatherization and home performance, being a blow a door nerd, I'd always ask people, like, what's the tightest house you would work on? Like, what's your best blow a door number? Like, how low were you able to go? How were you able to take that house and get it down to those really low building science numbers? And then what'd you do about ventilation? Like, how'd you overcome that hassle? And David was talking about these super, super tight blow a door numbers that were just blowing my head off, and like super insulated walls. And I'm like, I got to learn more about this. But I didn't really understand his presentation, because it was like, like it's like super nerdy. And I'm nerdy, but I'm not that nerdy, like number nerdy. So I came home, and then from the conference, I was all excited, and I found this passionate group of people in New York City under New York Passive House. And they had this meetup group early on where they just sent out these notices when these meetups would happen. And I showed up to a few of them. I met Ken and Sam and Flores and this vibrant community, and Andres, and all these people talking about Passive House and the projects they have going on. And one time I was at a Passive House meetup, and Tomás O'Leary was talking about the training that they're doing with the consultant training and the activities they have in Ireland and Europe, and how they're bringing the training over here. And during the conversation, Tomás says, does anyone, we're looking to get this tradesperson training rolling, and does anyone have any training space? And I'm like, I work at a place that has, a few thousand square feet of training space available. And he was like, that's great. And ever since then, me and Tomás have been very close friends. And you fast forward a few months or years, we took a trip over to Ireland, myself and Adam Romano from AEA, to take the first Passive House tradesperson training, one of the first Passive House tradesperson trainings that was happening in Ireland. But it was a bunch of Americans and Canadians. Tim McDonald was there, Sam McAfee, Sandra Roller was in the class, Julie Moshkovich Torres, Tim McDonald and his brother. Like, it was like a great group of people. Yeah. We went to Ireland. We took the training. The training was phenomenal. It was hands-on. It was at this beautiful workshop, this kind of like workforce development place they had in Ireland. Tomás put on a great show of taking us to different sites, and had a factory, like a window distributor come to the training facility and showed us. We had a party in Tomás's house, the out of the blue. It was a great experience. And then from there, we came back and we tried to take the training to the AEA's tradesperson training facility. So from, I want to say 2008 right up until about when COVID started, we were doing trainings 3-4 times a year, teaching the tradesperson training.
Right. So that's that evolution from the home improvement, the home energy audit space, which is looking at significant, but still, compared to Passive House, modest improvements in energy performance. But I think what's cool about it is that it's really firmly grounded in building science. So it's almost like a gateway drug to Passive House, and it's cool to hear that the evolution of the AEA space, and as well, that it could then become a hub for Passive House training. So not only were you experiencing that kind of evolution and journey through home performance work to Passive House, but this key institution in New York City was also going through a similar transformation.
The leadership at AEA was great. David Heppenstall and Adam Romano. They really embraced the Passive House ideas, because it really followed suit with building science first, and building science works on buildings big and small. AEA was known for being the multifamily weatherization experts throughout the country, and we got in on the ground floor within Passive House of doing the training. And then fast forward a few years, and the AEA team worked on a senior housing that was Passive House certified, the Corona project, which was a great project. The AEA multifamily team built mock-ups. It was a great process, and it's a great project. And there's AEA's involved in a few more Passive House projects right now as well. So
right, awesome. So you touched a little bit on some of the challenges around the training related to home performance stuff. So how about Passive House? What do you see as the biggest challenge related to Passive House and the trades right now, and how do you think we need to address it?
I've been in the right position a few times. Like I've been the trainer teaching a group of passionate people, and after the class, they ask questions and they talk about details, and we really get into really good conversations about construction. And I was very lucky to work on the Cornell Tech project, in that I taught the team from Monadnock the Passive House tradesperson course. We did it quite innovatively. We did it on nights and weekends. So we'd go to the construction trailer. I'd throw on the presentation, and then we'd do like a few hands-on mock-ups. And it was great. It was an early process that we found as the building was going up. We built kind of like 3 walls that then attached to the panel, almost like a hands-on workshop. And then we tested that with the blow-a-door. And we were gonna figure out if our walls leaked that we built or the panels were leaking. And it gave us the ability to trace down leaks and show on a small scale what the process would be of doing a blow-a-door on a 27-story building, which is not that common to do.
Right.
It was great. And then fast forward a few more years, and then I was able to work on a few other multifamily Passive House projects, 29th Street and 86th Street. And we just took that model and we did a mock-up, and we did field training for the site supers and the kind of like the each one of the trades. So we did an on-site training for each one of them, for each class. At first, we started with one general class, and if we weren't talking exactly about the work that they were doing, nobody else was paying attention. And then the next model was to bring in each trade individually and go over their scope of work and how it affected the building. So we had a little workshop on how the plumbers affect the building, how the electricians affect the building, and then really worked hand in hand with the air barrier installers and the window installers. And at that same time, the construction site supers, construction assistant construction site supers, they were all involved in the training. So they were becoming part of the quality assurance team, is what I would call it. So the challenges in the trades is making sure that the right people get trained. So the people who are doing the work have the knowledge of Passive House, what the rules of the game are. So then they're making decisions that they know what the critical path items are, but also where they're moving outside the lines, where they're in risk of having, compromising their blow-a-door test or not installing the correct amount of insulation. And then what are the consequences? Is it condensation, mold, mildew, building rot, deterioration? And then they have the knowledge to say, hey, this isn't the best thing. Let's ask the right questions, as opposed to normal construction is just schedule. Let's just get it done. It looks good. It is good. Whereas within Passive House, it's going to be tested. Somebody else is going to look at it. Not only just the site super team, but the architect, the Passive House consultant. Many people are going to have oversight, and we're going to find these mistakes. And the mistakes that happen, we want to find them up front, not behind. So we don't want to cause delays and have to build like unbuild and then rebuild and correct those problems. So I find that the training of the right people and the right time is important. So one of the models I really like is when you say you have a large building or even a small building, is to do like an RFQ request for qualifications. So either require the Passive House tradesperson training or the FIAS builders training of people who have Passive House experience that can prove it. And then did they work on a project? What was the blow-a-door test numbers? Or they can prove that they're qualified by saying that they worked on projects that have been certified. They haven't taken the training, but they've been involved in a project that's been successful. So I think those RFQ models are great. And then making sure that you have like proper kickoffs, making sure that you're setting the hierarchy of the project up. If it's a brownstone renovation or if it's a 20-story project, I think it's important to make sure that the site supers are trained, the assistant site supers, and the people who are like kind of like the gatekeepers, or making sure the project is being pushed right, have the knowledge of what Passive House is, because it's different than normal construction.
Yeah, that's great. Those are really important insights. So let's pivot to the construction tech program at Passive House Accelerator. I mentioned in the intro that you're one of the co-hosts, and you're a co-creator of the program. And this coming week, this is the week of January 10th, 2022, you are going to be starting with a primer you'll be presenting a primer on cellulose installation. What else do you want to tackle this year at Construction Tech?
It's great to do the first presentation of 2020 on what's been like the foundation of my career of blowing cellulose. Cellulose is well rooted in the history of weatherization, and it's also has a really good foundation in Passive House as well. So I'm insulating a building properly using the proper techniques and process and technology of the machines. It's great, and it's something I truly enjoy doing, and it's great to share that knowledge, because it's not common knowledge. Not every insulation blower can do dense packed cellulose, but you need the technical skills and the knowledge how to tune the machine to do it. It's a good process. So I'll explain that on the show. It should be great. Might get a little nerdy. I'll show some pictures, some throwback pictures of 2004 weatherization photos. Nice. It should be fun. So as far as the rest of the year goes with Construction Tech, I think we're gonna try and get some more on-site kind of like little mini workshops, I guess you could say. Nice. And then open up the discussion. It's been great to be a part of a community that's closed in during COVID that just opened up. You know, it was a great honor to be on Construction Tech and look and see that we have 300 plus people on from all around the world. It was one show we had Dr. Vida Abel on the show from, right, at like 2:00 in the morning in Germany and Europe. And I was blown away. I'm like, what did we do? Yeah. Like we got a great audience, and people share a lot of their experience, and the format that we have, I think it's fun and it's light, but it also can get technical. And we really share good information is what we try to do, and make sure people are engaged as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really looking forward to this year of programming, and the on-site stuff I think is going to be super exciting. I mean, some of our best shows in the past have been on-site as well, so it'll be great. Well, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up here?
Kind of, I guess the evolution of like my career and my business was, I was in the right spot at the right time for many of these opportunities, not only from getting a job in weatherization, but to getting a job as a trainer at AEA, but also being in the right spot when Passive House needed the knowledge that they had. So on some of the early backstingui projects, I was able to be a part of those projects by doing blow-a-door testing, as well as some of the dense packed cellulose work. And I just kept seeing the need for more experience out in the field. And it's a little more rewarding to take your own team of people and train them and get them to complete a project. So over the past 5-6 years, myself and the guys and girls that work on my team, we've gone out and we've done not only cellulose work and blow-a-door testing, but we've also taken on whole projects. So we handle the air barrier from subgrade, from the vapor barrier all the way up to the wall to the roof on all the install. We manage the window install, the window install airtightness side of it. We've installed windows. We've had some pretty good track records of completing good blow-a-door numbers on these brownstone projects. So our keynote, we have 2 projects in Brooklyn Heights that are underway and soon to get there. They're in different stages, but the blow-a-door tests are pretty good. Getting below 1 air change per hour on a 100-year-old building is no easy feat. Yeah, so right. We'll do our final blow a door test for one of the projects we're working on for 2 years. We did a pre-blow a door test. It was exciting. The numbers were great, and all the windows and doors are in. We're getting the last bit of insulation done on those projects, and hopefully we'll get good numbers from that. And we've also been working on the 25th Street project, which ironically is an old New York City firehouse.
Right.
And it's great to be a part of that project, because not only myself, but the guys I work with, we live in a firehouse, and to see that just with proper detailing and smart choices of heating equipment, ventilation equipment, you can have a very efficient, comfortable building. The project it's a commercial building on the first floor and then residential above, which is kind of how most firehouses are set up. And to be able to point to and show in the next few years, like, oh yeah, that project is Passive House certified. It was an old firehouse. We could do every New York City firehouse just like this if we just focused on the details. And the irony is that the craft and the trade is a bunch of firemen and working on their days off, leading the way.
Right. And that's awesome.
It's
at Brennan. So, and this is all work that is happening through your firm, Brennan Brennan Insulation and Airtightness. So, I know you have at least one other fireman working with you, right?
Yeah, there's a few guys that awesome. are key members of our team, and it's great to not only work side by side in as a team as a fireman, but also in the same firehouse. Yeah. But it's good to take that same level and work in the trades as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely. And I'd be remiss to not mention the Vancouver, British Columbia has a new Passive House firehouse as well. I think, is it open or is it nearly open?
I think they're in the completion stages. That's a great project. And, for any major city, a new construction project that is a firehouse or any structure that is, it's really not that far to go from standard construction code-based 2020-21 to Passive House. It's a matter of managing details and making sure that the thickness is there. The hard part is the schedule. So a lot of that time, that money spent 10 years in advance, and they make the plan based on the budget. So the politics of it, and well above my pay grade, but it's really not that far of a leap. It was great to see the article from North American Passive House Network from Stephen Winters about the cost change of Passive House projects over multifamily projects. It was anywhere from, I want to say 2 to 5%, but their key correlation there was the experience of the construction team and training of the team. So it was a good correlation, and I think it could work in just about any building. So
yeah, definitely. Well, this has been really fun, Kevin, and I also enjoyed at the very beginning of the talk learning about your connection to Australia and the impact of your experience in Australia on your career path. And I think there are a lot of listeners who will appreciate that, because we have tons of listeners from Australia. And the reason the podcast exists is thanks to the kind of brainstorming and leadership of Matthew Cutler Welsh, the co-host of the podcast, who is an Aussie and is based in New Zealand. So it's cool to see this connection between the Down Under and New York City, which is such a center right now of Passive House leadership. So thanks for sharing that. It was fun to hear about it.
Yeah, it was a great experience, and I love living in Newcastle, Australia. Let's go Knights, and I have to make it back sometime soon, and would love to go on a Passive House tour in Australia and see all the wonderful Passive House projects that are happening out there.
Yeah, right on.
So,
well, thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate it. We'll see you at Construction Tech.
Yeah, I'm excited for 2022 in Construction Tech, and it's been a great privilege to work with the Passive House Accelerator and the entire team that you guys have put together, and the ability to impact the broad market of Passive House, just not within our our borders in North America, but throughout the world. It's been a great to be a part of. And it's I think there's plenty of doors that can open, and I think the key is collaboration. So let's make 2022 and the rest of the years even better than 2021 was, even though we were restricted a little, but I think we made the best of it.
Indeed. Well, right back at you, Kevin. Thanks,
Zach, and keep up the good work on the podcast. It's been great to listen to on my way to and from work, from the firehouse and or working on the construction sites. It's great to hear the stories and the knowledge of the people that are out there.
All right, and that was Kevin Brennan, co-owner of Brennan Brennan, but also a familiar voice to many on the Passive House Accelerator. Great interview, Zack. I really enjoyed listening to that, and great insight into the journey of someone who's been so involved in this space for quite some time.
Yeah, it was really fun. So what were some of your key takeaways?
Australia.
Yeah, right?
Thanks
Australia.
For the shout out.
Shout out for Australia. I know. I thought that was great. I did not expect that at the beginning of I did not know that as part of his story. It was pretty great.
It's pretty funny. I have to wonder how much of that is just by virtue of traveling and that whole experience of being somewhere else and appreciating a different perspective. But I also think there's something in it in terms of the value that we put on tradespeople and builders. I really like this term. I was talking to a roofing specialist the other day, last year, and he said, he pulled me up because I was using the term subtrades, which we often talk about if you have electricians, plumbers, those people.
Like subcontractors.
Subcontractors, yeah. And sub is underneath, it has that implication of your main contractor and then your subcontractors. And he said, no, we should be calling them specialist contractors. It's like, that's true, because they're not below in terms of their technical ability. If you were to think of a doctor as your GP, if you needed to have something specialist attention, you would go to a specialist, and that's exactly what you're doing with a builder who knows a lot about a specific area. And if that happens to be something really critical like airtightness and insulation, then that's a specialist. It's not someone who's underneath another contractor. It's someone who specializes in that area. So stepping back to that insight about where we place tradespeople and even builders in our perception of value, I really love coming across builders who know their stuff and not just approach their craft as a craft and become masters in that art, but also go into the science and understand what's going on during the construction process, because they're an amazing asset. And you can also tell that they just love their work and that they see that it is just as valuable as an architect who's sitting in an office doing also really good work, but in a different way. And it's not so much, I think, a hierarchy, but a collaboration of those people doing a craft. So I think it's a good insight. I don't know what the culture is necessarily like in New York at this stage, and whether that is different here in Australia and New Zealand, but I do think that all around the world we can put more value on good builders and good tradespeople who are doing great work every day on building sites.
Yeah, I agree. And I come from a line of builders. I'm not a builder, but my dad was a builder. His dad was a builder. His dad was a builder. My brother is a builder. He's a master builder, done one of the first passive houses in Seattle. And when I was a youngster thinking about school and thinking about the next, what I would do with my life, I never once considered construction as something that I would do, and which is ironic given that now this is my life. Talking about construction and being so excited about the potential for construction to make people's lives better and to mitigate climate change and to weather climate change and all these things. So I do think that there's something real, even for folks who come from that kind of lineage of respect for craft and for this profession. I think that we can maybe undervalue that as a society for sure. So. And then you run into people like Kevin Brennan, and I mean, he's just talk about going to a specialist. I don't know if my cat is getting in on the conversation there, but he's a master and also a really talented educator. So it's
and that's a good point as well, because I think education often gets kind of jokingly put down as, if you can't do, you teach. But I think it's the other way around. I think
absolutely.
If you can't teach, you just carry on doing. And to teach well, you have to really understand what you're doing more than just being able to do it, because it's a whole nother level to explain that process to someone else. And I think teachers and the whole education process, whether it's school or a craft or a profession, is also massively undervalued and underrated. So we could probably carry on about that, but I also wanted to just pull up the timeline of Brennan's journey there. About 20 years ago, he had that experience of going traveling. And there's maybe some irony in the fact that I believe that Australia and New Zealand is 20 years behind in a lot of ways still. So what inspired some of Kevin's journey, I think we haven't really moved on. We haven't gone at the same pace, and we've kind of left ourselves behind with things like a whole weatherization industry. Weatherization is not really a thing here,
Right.
other than in very small circles of people who are coming into learning about Passive House or communicating with building science experts in North America. But I think it's a really useful term, and because it describes what it is. It's making a building tighter against the weather, but not entirely weatherproof. We don't necessarily want buildings that are completely waterproof. We don't want them completely vapor tight, but we do want them to be tighter against the weather, whether that's a 40 degrees Celsius day in blaring sun in Australia in summer, or whether it's during a snowstorm in Seattle. So I think it's a really useful term. And the other thing I like about weatherization is that it encompasses all the important control layers of a building envelope. It's not just about sticking on more and more insulation, but airtightness is a really big part of that. And I think it was really telling that in Kevin's journey, those dots started to get joined up from his early learning about blower door and airtightness, even way before he'd come across Passive House. But then when he did learn about Passive House, it all started to make sense on how it all fits together.
Right. When you get into the building science and the physics and start learning about the kind of the systems approach to making buildings better, then Passive House becomes you discover Passive House, and that's the logical kind of conclusion for that line of thinking and that line of thought. And I think that weatherization, I hadn't really appreciated that term until you brought it up, but we were talking earlier, and then that it also gets, it speaks to the central purpose of shelter in the first place, which is nice. I think maybe when people hear you lead with the term airtightness, there's the whole kind of misperception of buildings need to breathe and all that stuff. But when you talk about weatherization, it's like, that's making buildings better at what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
To keep us sheltered from the elements.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. And then finally, I think there's some really important messages there about the reliance on government programs, government incentives of setting up a business, setting up a movement or organization that relies on government funding. It can be very tempting. I've seen it happen. We've seen it happen, and we see it happen in other industries as well. But if you rely solely on a source of external funding for the operation of a business or even an organization, then that's a very risky place to be, particularly when inevitably that funding dries up, and then the market's got a very skewed perception of the real cost of that service or the products or whatever it might be. So subsidies do have a place and incentives have a place, but we need to be very careful about aligning those or relying on them too much.
Right. It seems like the businesses need to be really cautious about getting too reliant on subsidies. And then subsidies, when we do implement subsidies, we need to make sure, as government policymakers and society, we need to make sure that the cost of the service or component or, the cost of what we're subsidizing can go down.
Yeah,
that there's an experience curve there that can be followed that will bring the cost down. And I would argue that we could probably see that in Passive House, because we see, with this holistic approach, I really feel like passive house design and construction is really like a technology. So if like the parallel with solar panels or wind turbines, so you do see an experience curve driving costs down. So, as I think that I still think that we could consider subsidizing Passive House for a period to kind of bring the cost down in different markets. But you're right. It was frustrating to watch firsthand that whole home performance industry in the United States kind of crater after the money from the American Recovery Act dried up. As it was harder to make the case to homeowners to do it.
Yeah, I keep harping back to it, but I really like the roadmap approach of the Vancouver Energy Step Code, because I think a lot
British
of
Columbia,
British Columbia. I think a lot of the problem is abrupt changes that aren't forecast. Whereas if you have a roadmap to say, here's what the plan is over the next 5 or 10 years, then that allows industry to accommodate that, and subsidies can be part of that roadmap. But if there's a 5-year plan saying this is when the subsidies will taper off, and then at this point in the future they will end, rather than just overnight they just stop, that's a much better way perhaps of helping an industry emerge and then get going under its own steam.
Indeed. Yeah.
Anything else from that chat from you?
It was not. No, I don't think so. I think we've covered most of it. I'm looking forward to Kevin's appearance at Construction Tech this Tuesday, Wednesday your time. So, and I can get into that a little bit in the announcements for events.
Yeah, well, let's do that now. What have we got coming up?
Okay,
first events calendar for 2022.
We have Kevin Brennan on Construction Tech, January 11th here, and January 12th for you. And Kevin is going to be doing a primer for us on dense packed cellulose insulation for high performance buildings. So we're really 2022 is going to see, I think, a lot more focus on on-site applications of Passive House construction practice. And so this is going to be a great kickoff of that with Kevin. And then on Wednesday, January 12th, Thursday, January 13th, your time, for the Global Passive House Showcase, we are going to be joined by Bomi Zhang of Topside Advisors and Yuan Tan of the Rocky Mountain Institute, and they're going to be presenting about their report, Decarbonized Homes and Healthier Communities. And this is a report that dives into the concept of improving health in low-income communities through beneficial electrification. So it's really looking, this is kind of beneficial electrification in their framing is bringing together affordability, energy efficiency, and building electrification, and how those all combine. So I'm really looking forward to that presentation as well this week. And there's more stuff going on in the community, of course, and we'll have links to that in show notes.
Awesome. Yeah, going to be a busy year. We hope it's going to be a busy year filled with lots of physical events. We've got some catching up to do from 2021, where quite a few events got cancelled or rescheduled. So I'm looking forward to that. I just remembered one of the other highlights from that, or one of the notes that Kevin brought up, was the value of get-togethers, and you know, some of those early just social networking events that Kevin happened to go along and meet some other Passive House enthusiasts, and that was sort of set him off on that pathway. And I think there's a lot of value to that, and I think that people will be appreciating that more and more, being able to go and have a drink with people and to catch up and just have a chat. Yeah,
definitely. Here.
But if you can't do that in person, then Accelerator is a great way of connecting with a huge tribe all around the world. So hopefully people can find a session in their time zone that suits.
Indeed. Come Zoom with us.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Hey, great to be back, Zach. Good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
And we'll be back again next week on the Passive House Accelerator podcast.